And now what happens?
So, hello, bonjour, guten Tag to everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar presented to you by the European Champions Alliance on the protection of industrial systems. My name is Andrea Vaughan. I'm one of the co-founders of our alliance and will host this webinar together with Dominique Tessier, our head of cybersecurity. A few words on us for those who do not know us yet. The European Champions Alliance is a non-for-profit association created in February 2020, and we are building an ecosystem of startups, scale-ups, SMEs, corporates, and industry experts committed to European tech and values. We leverage our European network by sharing market knowledge with our members and the ecosystem, and by activating joint business opportunities between our members and our ecosystem, with the goal to support the growth of European technology champions. We organize a lot of events like this webinar and also publish industry-specific information like buyer's guides, scale-up mappings, articles, and interviews that you can find on our blog. Our little helping hand, Carla, will put the links in the chat for you to easier access our information. We also organize a lot of internal meetings, networking opportunities, and working sessions with our members on various European topics. You can become a member as a private person or as a company. We'll put the link to the membership info in the chat. If you have any question on how to become a member, please let us know. We're here to answer your questions. So this webinar today is the first of a series of webinars and smaller meetings on European cybersecurity, and is part of a larger campaign that we are running since a couple of weeks to inform the market about the great offer of European cybersecurity companies. You can see more information on our website and on our LinkedIn profile that we will put in the chat so that everyone can see them. Do not hesitate to follow us on LinkedIn and also to subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't done yet by signing up for this webinar. With these webinars and meetings, we would like to create a trustful discussion space for European cybersecurity companies and the ecosystem. So if you'd like to be part of this, please contact us at welcome@european-champions.org or on social media. And now, without further ado, I will briefly present our speakers today. Carla will put the links to their LinkedIn profiles in the chat alongside my presentation, so you can check them out and connect if you think it is of mutual interest and value. So let's start. Welcome to Hervé, who is the CISO of Framatome, a French company that builds nuclear plant cores, a critical industry, of course. So you want to rely more on IoT for the purpose of remote monitoring, and of course you need such IoT systems to be totally secure. Roland Atoui, you are the founder and CEO of RedAlertLabs, a company securing IoT, and you are also an advisor to the ENISA regarding standardization of security requirements for IoT, and also a highly valued member of the ECA. Gweltas from Wisekey, you are leading the IoT activities of the Swiss company Wisekey, and you have extensive knowledge of the trends and the requirements in this field, and you're also a member of the ECA. Now I want to welcome Nicolas from Tehtris, that we know as an XDR cyber editor. So you're representing the IoT security part of Tehtris today. Thank you very much for being with us. And of course, Vincent from Stormshield. We also know Stormshield as a large cybersecurity company. Stormshield has an offer for securing industrial systems and IoT, which you are representing today in this webinar. So thank you for all of taking the time to be with us today, and also during the preparation of this panel. We are looking forward to your knowledge and insight on this highly strategic topic. And to all who listen, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the panel. Please state your questions in the chat box during the discussion, and we'll collect all of the questions and we'll answer to them collectively in the end. And now I'm happy to hand over to Dominique, who will guide us through the panel and ask the questions to our panelists. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, and good, what should I say, good afternoon or good evening to everyone. Of course, this first webinar that we have designed for both cybersecurity users, mainly CISOs, and also suppliers, is is important. We have chosen this question of the protection of industrial systems. You imagine the situation with many industrial companies in Europe now transitioning to Industry 4.0. So having robots and sensors on the plants. And you imagine the situation if these systems would be hacked. I mean, it would stop immediately a plant, and stopping a plant would cost millions of euros per day or even more. So that's really of paramount importance. My first question to give light to this domain of cybersecurity of industrial systems and industrial IoT. My first question is for Hervé for Framatome. So how do you see, Hervé, the importance of IoT and industrial systems security for your business, for the business of Framatome? And having that in mind, when you deal with this question of protection of IoT, what are the main criteria you have in mind?
Okay, so first of all, I am representing in Framatome the service side of our business, the division that is ensuring the maintenance of the nuclear assets all around the world. And inside this maintenance business, we do have two security concerns. One concerning our own asset inventory, and the one concerning our customer assets that are even more critical because they are, for some of them, nuclear operators, and for others, and all of them, critical industries. When we deal with OT in critical industries, it's not just a matter of money being lost because the production assets are stopped. It's also a matter of service reliability or service level being affected. And for these industries, it's a national impact, much more than a corporate impact or an issue for the industry. Protecting such assets is not an easy task because we are in the industrial timeline. That timeline is specific because we are having assets that are lasting much more than 10 years. We are a long-term industry, and because of that, the life cycle of our assets are much higher than what we can see in the manufacturing area. So because of that, being able to protect on a reliable way the assets on the cybersecurity aspects are critical. And it's even more important than now we are addressing new requirements coming with Industry 4.0 use cases, where we are bringing connectivity where there was no connectivity. Okay, for a long time, everybody was listening to cybersecurity experts explaining how air gap is protecting the assets. You know that with the new use cases, this is less and less a reality because connectivity is also a level of performance, and because it's a level of performance, it's an aspect that every operator and every maintainers are looking for. It's also the case with the pandemic situation where our people for maintenance were not able to travel and to go physically support the customer. Because of that, remote accesses and other solutions that needs to fit with security have been designed. So it's on our business area. Cybersecurity for the OT assets are very critical, and IoT is, let's say, a part of these OT assets that is that is particularly interesting in terms of defense, because it's a fleet of assets that is much higher, that is much higher in numbers than the assets we are used to maintain. So this is typically the landscape or the playground for security we are working on.
Okay. So maybe it's time now to ask questions to our suppliers. I will start. I will take the first name, the first letter or the first name to guide myself. So Gweltas, you will be my first. I am losing my thing.
First speaker.
My first speaker, yes, thank you. I would like to ask you, but I have well, when it comes to securing IIoT and industrial systems, what priorities do you recommend to consider? I mean, there are of course a lot of things to do, but what is really key? And if, for instance, if I quote, I'm thinking of meters administration, connected object in general administration, trusted connection between meters or sensors and computing. What are the priorities?
Okay, thanks for giving the opportunity to talk at this conference first. Well, it's a relatively broad topic, but I would consider, in fact, 3 elements in IoT security around the device and the data. It's first authentication of the device, meaning giving an identity which can be authenticated. Second, we will focus on the confidentiality of the data, and the third will be the integrity of data, because especially in industry, we want to make sure that the data, which will be then used for further analysis, can be trusted. So the key for me, the key components are first for a company or an IoT application or an OEM is to focus on the early adoption. So meaning implementing a security by design approach. We can leverage this in this webinar later on. So especially, for instance, taking care of security by design at prototype stage. Then implement security design guidelines and good practices, but I think some other members will talk about that. And of course, carry out risk analysis, security risk analysis, depending on the application and the use case, in order to analyze the threats, the potential vulnerabilities, and the impact of the attacks which could occur on the IoT solution. And then I would focus on 2 main aspects when we talk about IoT security, but we can also talk later about that. The device identity itself, which usually is based on, let's say, cryptographic keys and different elements which are embedded in the device. But I will let the floor to other members to talk about other aspects also on the IoT security.
Okay, so thank you, Gweltas. Same question for Nicolas of Tehtris.
Thanks, Dominique. So one of the key elements while speaking of production in OT and IoT world is about availability of the services, which is tightly linked to the integrity aspect, meaning underneath by safety, by avoiding putting at risk the physical security, the process security, or the data security which are attached to it. Based on that, we distinguish, based on our 10 years experience in the IT and OT market, is that you have 3 main areas of investigation in terms of action to proceed. The first area is regarding what is so-called the dump sensor. because you have no resources, very low capacity in terms of storage, compute, and network. So you will more focus on the hardening based on a network approach. While speaking of smart sensors, another so-called gateways by some of the vendors, you could embed technical other solutions, such as analyzing the data with the CM, analyzing the network through the DNS, and even if you have a bit more capacity, you are able to implement EDR within the component itself in order to have an highest level of visibility, which permit to perform the protection aspect of the NIST, which is reducing the attack surface, in addition of the detection and reaction. The last one is about the cloud, because most of the IoT and OTs are connected to a cloud. And here you have the full range of what's so-called usual for Tehtris capabilities with XDR, with the full panel from network, component on the endpoint, application. So what is important and the real priority is to do security by design and by default. Afterwards, you see it's more complicated, and you have to onboard, you have to negotiate quite a lot with a vendor in order to onboard the security, to have tight security, strong security embedded into the platform. And it's not just about authentication and traceability. Every step of the process has to be conceived and designed in a secure manner.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds a little complex. Roland, what can you add on this?
Hello, everyone. So IT security indeed is a wide topic, and I could take all the day to talk about priorities. So let's take actually another way around. Actually, an example of, for example, you are a CISO and you are or an IT or OT administrator in charge of leading the integration of an IoT into your business operations. So you want, desperately to avoid getting famous due to hackers activities. So if one thing I would recommend you to start with is to ask a question related to your supply chain. So what are does the product vendor or suppliers provide a supply chain of trust? So as you probably everybody knows, I mean, now the 80% of cyber breaches may originate from the supply chain. So when we talk about trust, it's a concept of knowing where you're sourcing software or hardware and understanding the security inside of whatever it is you're sourcing in. So it's somehow taking ownership of every layer of security. And you know that actually IoT, and especially in the industrial domain, incorporate different components coming from different suppliers, and it's very difficult actually to follow this value chain. So it's very important to develop this posture towards third-party components, and that's something that I would like to emphasize. And so when you ask this question, look out of vendors, for example, compliance to standards, best practices, processes, procedures. Usually it's represented by cybersecurity certification or any stamp of compliance. That's something that's really very, very important to, and I'd like to emphasize probably in one of the priorities.
Okay, and Vincent, what are your 2 cents on this question?
So in addition to what was said previously, I can add some priorities on the security of the flow of communication that goes through the OT networks. And first, the basics is to protect the IT-OT barrier and implement the firewall between the both networks, because as you know, there is some convergence between all those networks, and they are even more communicated together. So we recommend a double barrier and to reduce the attack surface between the two network of informations. And then when you have done that, what is important to do is a network segmentations. So the OT network were designed 10, 20, or 30 years ago, and do not have some architecture designed for cybersecurity. And in most of the case, the networks are flat. So bringing some segmentation reduce the attack surface on that. And it's important to do this by zone, by grouping equipment with the same security level. So there is a big reference on that standard, which is the IEC 62443, which recommend that with the famous zone and conduit. Yeah, this is what is included on this standard. You can get information to have more details about that. Then, when you have done the IT/OT barrier network segmentation, you have the process protection with micro segmentation, or and if you are able to analyze the communication between the components, the PLC and the assets, so you can bring some IDS and IPS analysis in order to filtering the policies that only implement filtering policy that only authorize legitimate exchange of information between the components. Another use case is the securing of remote maintenance. In OT environments, there is a lot of connection that coming out of the OT network, like OEM provider, machine manufacturer, integrators. So it's important to secure the flow and encapsulate the communication in a VPN, especially when they are using industrial protocol, because the industrial protocol were designed 20 or 30 years ago. They don't implement any, let's say, cybersecurity mechanism. So if you secure them with a VPN, you are able to make sure that the communication is secure. So on top of that, you have to authenticate the user that connect to the network. You can apply a security policy adapted to the user profile. If I am an OEM, I am doing the maintenance, I should have only connection directly to the PLC or to the machine I have to do the maintenance, and not on all the networks. So yeah, that's basically what we can do. And in addition, there is this security of the flow, but you can also add some hardening of the workstation, which are really critical, the HMI supervision and engineering PC. For that, you can deploy a solution that's able to harden the PC with, you can implement whitelisting of application, control the peripheral, such as the USB key that are really reused in OT environments, block the devices that are not used, etc., etc. So that's basically what I can add to that.
I like your word basically. Look, I have just taken some notes. I have heard the following focuses that you have mentioned. We should authenticate the meters. We should authenticate the users. We should make sure the supply chain that we use is okay, is clean, so that we don't get, bullshit meters full of backdoors. We should secure the connection between sensors and, I wouldn't say user, let's say computing points.
Yeah.
We should consider segmentation, that is, in case we have an infection going on, it will hit only a part of the system. And finally, we should think of hardening. So don't use any sort of meter or computing point. Use hardened equipment. Fine. So I will turn now to Eleonore of Thalès and ask you, in this very complex world with so many concepts, you as Thalès, as a big integrator, which are working on many critical systems, what priorities would you recommend to consider? When you are talking to a big user, a critical manufacturer or someone like that, what are the three main points you want to cover first?
So thanks for giving me the floor tonight. So hi everyone. I connected 10 minutes late. Apologies for that. There is one point that I think hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's maybe a priority I see because I'm more on the business part rather than the technical one. But I haven't heard the word ownership. Who is actually in charge of this convergence between IT security and OT security, covering as well IoT, right? Because in the large account we are working with, or the SMEs we're also working with at a more national scale, when you raise up the point around cybersecurity, production lines or plants, factories, etc., all of a sudden you end up with having the CISO, CIO saying, yeah, convergence is mandatory, we have to do it, and he's fighting over that. And then very soon at the table comes the COO, Chief Operations Officer, because actually IoT, OT, cybersecurity is raising very different cybersecurity challenges and priorities in terms of what are the key risks, right? Not confidentiality of the data. Yeah, okay. Industrial spying is important, but is it more or less important than production continuity, business continuity, or people's safety? So what I see currently is you have a bit of a blurry ownership when it comes to this convergence. The money, most of the times, the budget sits at the COO level when it comes to cyber securing production lines. So you have the CISO going, that's my area, that's cybersecurity, but it can't really be better through the CIO budget because it's very large amounts. So I think that's a point that is critical to address as a priority when you're an OT equipment end user who is in charge. Another point that is also, I think, crucial, once you have sorted the ownership, is actually how granular the responsibility is going to be. Because it's all good to connect everything, converge everything, and have this central, monitoring towers, SOC services, or MSSP partners, etc. But at the end of the day, you need to have a very close relation with the shop floor teams. Okay, they are the ones who know the factory environment. So what you describe as, network segmentation or asset inventory or users, etc., that's all very good. When my experience is that when you walk in and you go, hey everyone, I'm the cybersecurity person, I'm going to fix all that for you, they go, no, just don't cut anything, just get out of my plant, get out of my shop floor, go upstairs and talk with my boss, but get out of my production line floor. So that's also a thing that I will emphasize when you want to deploy these measures that you mentioned earlier. Ensure you are embedding the let's say, empowering individuals that are really boots on the ground at the factory levels in different geographies. We have worked with accounts with dozens of factories. It's not working if you have just your HQ team saying, hello guys, 300 factories, easy peasy, I'm just going to pay and it's going to be fine. No. The guys will not, they will not be there. They won't eventually give you all the information. You're challenging them. It's really embedding the teams are crucial. So ownership and project management, including inside your own organization. You're going to need key points of contact in regions, sub-regions, to ensure that these measures you mentioned are actually implemented on time. So these are my 2 cents, basically, because I think that's something we tend to to misrate in terms of priority when we talk about implementing converged cybersecurity?
Thank you, Eleonore. I think I'm going to rebound on what you have just said and ask the question to Hervé of Framatome. So ownership. Hervé, how do you react to Eleonore talk?
I liked it a lot. It sounds a lot to my ears. Typically, we implemented such responsibility and roles at all the levels of the company, starting with the workers and the field workers. Some of them are trained to detect what an attack looks like, what a threat looks like. We have in some operation teams also people ready to treat an event, to communicate efficiently an event to the response team. We have opportunities also to mobilize local solutions without high connectivity. So often you have to remember, and that goes together with ownership, you have to remember some of our people are in areas where connectivity is not the most easy to find resource. Okay, we are in environments where these features are not always deployed, and you need to be autonomous in the way to react, in the way to manage your cybersecurity response. And because of that, we do have two paces. There is one pace for reaction on the field, on the shop floor, or on the plant floor, when it deals to energy production. And there is a pace for people to think how to recover from an attack, or how to avoid translation or movements of the threat inside the information system at the HQ. And it's a crisis management that has to be coordinated on both levels. So it sounds a lot to my ears. And having solutions embedded, ready to be used and understood by people and understood by users is a key thing. Okay, and it's important for them to be able to mobilize this solution on an autonomous way with the good let's say ownership on the processes too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I would like to add a question to all of you. I think it was Gweltas at the beginning. You mentioned security by design, but in practice, I mean, plants 4.0. Many of them, they won't start from scratch. They will start from an existing factory with an existing production lines, existing machines, and so on and so forth. So in such case where you have in fact to deal with existing things, how can you implement security by design from day one, I would say? So this is
yes,
all of you who wants to.
You raised a good question. Who wants to start?
Maybe I can start. Regarding the security by design for a complete system, it's quite important first for the assets themselves, such as the PLC. So we see that some vendors are working on the subject, and there is some of them that already have labeled PLC according to the NC or to the IEC 62443. And we have also the security by design for the system itself. And what I would like to say is that the engineering and consulting companies that work on an industrial system must integrate cybersecurity in the project in the same way that they are working on the safety or on the process continuity. So today we still see too many calls for tenders where there is no cybersecurity part, or sometimes there is a cybersecurity part, but with a very vague and too much subject to interpretation of what you have to provide if you want to be compliant, if you want to bring cybersecurity on the system. So if you start from the very beginning of the system, so you need to implement also on the call for tender really at the really beginning of the project.
Okay. Anyone else wants to talk about security by design?
Yeah.
Nicolas?
Yeah. About security by design, first it's a question of people. And as Eleonore said, the ownership is something. But what really happens in security by design, you have an approach where the IT and OT, meaning production people, are working together. And this is a breaking event because until very recent period of time, it were parallel activities with very few joining points. So first is to build the bridges between the two worlds with the people. Then it is about to settle into the process from the tender as expressed, but also with the leadership of the production people who are the one accountable if something breaks, because they believe, and by reason, that IT people are sleeping at night and never present when an incident occurs. And it is real life. That's why everything should be in their hand, meaning we need to raise their awareness, their maturity to run, deploy, and operate such kind of secure by design solution. Then comes only the technical part with the hardening, with the authentication, with all the network aspect, with all the tooling. And by the end of the day, what should be done as a best practice is to perform a maturity assessment intrusion test to demonstrate that what has been settled and put in place is what has been designed previously. And then you can roll out internal certification, external certification, and to ensure that it do not have gaps in the time, you need to make it in a regular basis to ensure that you avoid any deviation. So it's really a matter of very basic things, as you said, Dominique, people, process, and tools. And overall, a great willingness to promote a consistent service that will resist in the time and under any kind of attacks, cyber or non-cyber attacks.
Let me precise my question, Gweltas, I have seen your hand. You have, Nicolas, you have just mentioned IT people, OT people. Cybersecurity is in the mind of IT people now for years. So they are accustomed to see that there are many points of pain in what they do, and they are accustomed to expect attacks to come even from places where they would not have expected some years ago. Is it the case for OT people? Is it the case for, as Eleonore said, people in the plants with their boots on the soil? Are they conscious that the hackers can follow exactly the same track as they have followed for IT systems and go inside their OT system? Gweltas, is that meaningful?
Well, maybe I can start. I agree with Nicolas and Eleonore. I think security by design means it's a question of mindset. Probably today, OT people are seeing, let's say, digital transformation by plugging their traditional OT with connectivity. So it means that, of course, they need to consider now new elements in the equation, especially the connectivity brings threats. The fact is, I mean, in my company, for instance, we talk to different, let's say, personas, some in charge of hardware and OT, some in charge of IT, and they are not talking the same language. So in fact, we are doing the job of, let's say, reconciliation between the two different categories of people in our customers' mind, because IT security is using usually techniques which are relatively heavy, power consuming, which are not adapted for OT. And in fact, it's our job to provide solutions which will reconcile the constraint coming from OT and the requirements given by IT.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Roland?
Yeah, I mean, everything was. I mean, I agree completely with everything that was said. The only thing that I probably would add is that. So we're talking about prevention here, right? We're talking about something that would be able. I mean, a concept that would be able to prevent the cybersecurity breach and avoiding actually to all the costs that to repair something that has been already including a flow. So when you talk about the people, the processes and the people you have to talk about also the risks, right? So somebody would have to understand the risk and have complete cybersecurity lifecycle perspective, so to allow somehow a continuous measurement of security. So security by design is not just about securing the development lifecycle, or be able somehow to have a secure code that would prevent everything that could happen, and the mindset. I mean, be like minimizing the risk to zero, because zero risk does not exist. So having to understand the risk and manage the risk during the whole life cycle, including features that, for example, allow secure updates, allows management of vulnerabilities, that's part of the security by design mindset, right? So that's something that we, unfortunately, in IoT industrial, we tend to see missing in many products that we've seen, and that's hopefully that. With standardization and with requirements that are coming further, that we could hopefully avoid such security by design flows to be included, and avoid the risk as much as possible.
Okay. Let me add one more question. If by any chance security has not been implemented from day one, what happens? Is a retrofit possible? Does it cost a lot? I'm still thinking of all these. Sorry to interrupt you, Hervé. I'm thinking of all these, as I said, of all these factories that exist today. You mentioned, Hervé, that the engines, the machines, the pumps, the whatever, the equipments you use in factories, in critical, in nuclear plants. Their life cycle is much more than 10 years. So it's very probable that when someone is thinking to introduce industrial IoT in its plant, it will have to go with some parts, some equipments which are there, sitting there for years and years. So it means that partly we will have to think in terms of retrofit, isn't it? Is it possible?
Hello.
It is?
Hello, do you get me?
Who is speaking? I cannot hear you.
Hervé speaking. Typically, that's a situation we are living on the day-to-day basis. We do think about implementing a new set of measures to catch new security goals or new security targets. And this is typically what OT maintenance is about. It is being able to bring and make the security level at the level the customer is willing this security to be. And to do that, we are implementing additional features that helps to recover security functions on assets that are not let's say that were not designed at that time to cover that threat level. And it's going to go and accelerate a lot because the pace the threat is evolving is going faster than the pace our assets are evolving. And we do security by design anytime we do renewal, refurbishment, or rework on assets. But when the asset is running, we are employing other remediation possibilities or remediation solutions that are dealing with hardening the asset in a way that the vulnerabilities cannot be exploited.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, yes, Nicolas?
It's retrofit is a reality, and we do see customer, and we are working with customer on the retrofit, on the full re-engineering, full revamping of the cyber vision of the production part. It takes time. It is complex because you have to maintain the production anyway. You have to find workarounds. In many times, it's not a native solution. It's also made of workarounds. So you have your native cyber solution I was speaking. You have workarounds, which can be manual, which can be organizational, and from time to time, also technical. It takes time to make a full revamping of a plant. It can take maybe 6 months, 1 year, because you have to take into account that you can work only within the maintenance frame, which are some days per year, according to the business process, which is related to. So it's a long time of preparation, of training to make the action, because the Windows time to proceed to the action itself, from time to time, it's maybe 6 to 12 hours during a year. So it is possible, but it's a lot of energy, and it is led by the production, by the maintenance people, with the support of the cyber expert.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What maybe I can add?
Yes.
I just want to would like to share some feedback that we have some manufacturers and some customers, just how they manage their project. We see different way to manage a project of retrofit. We see some manufacturer or some customer that identify the security functions to be implemented and deploy them one by one over time and through separate projects. So they start with, let's say, IT/OT segmentation, and they are doing this in all of their plants because they have several plants in France, in Europe, and sometimes out of Europe, and they do it separately project by project. Or we see some other that plan to create a cybersecurity core model, including all or most of the security functions, so access management, segmentation, backup and disaster recovery, and stuff like that. And which they have one core model, they deploy on one test plant, and then they deploy on the same way on all the sites. They do it, step by step. I have in mind some customer that did it in France, in 3 or 4 plants in France, and then in Europe, and then outside of that. But they managed to have one core model that is very clear, and they can deploy it exactly the same on each plant. So that's 2 ways of thinking about a project of cybersecurity, cybersecurity on your network.
That's very interesting what Vincent has just said, because it helps me going to my next question. Vincent has mentioned his customer having many plants in France, many plants in other parts of Europe and possibly of the world. My next question is about the ability to scale up. Why do I ask this question? Let me be the devil's advocate. US cybersecurity companies have a way to think of European ones, saying, "Oh, guys in Europe, you are very good to develop pilots, but when it's time to scale up, when it's time to deploy for thousands of pieces of equipment, you are not so good than we Americans are." So that's the question is, ability to scale up. We know, we have to recognize that often US companies that are good at this, at scale up. What can we say about European suppliers? So I expect you are all going to say, yes, we are able to scale up, but I mean, in terms of deployment, in terms of, I can take an example. I was discussing some months ago with the person who is in charge of the digital transformation of all plants for, I won't quote the group, it's a French group, a member of CAC 40, but he's specifically in charge of the plants. And he says, we always do the same. As Vincent said, we have a trial in one plant. We see how it goes, and if it goes well, we want to deploy that in 40. They have 40 plants all around the world, and we want to deploy that in the 40 plants. Of course, they don't do it, the 40 plants in one night. They have a plan, for instance, the 5 factories there, then the 5 factories somewhere else, and so on and so forth, but they want to go fast. They say it's a key element. Once we are convinced that we should use this new device, this new cybersecurity system for our plants, then we deploy, and we deploy quickly. Are we able to face this challenge? Yes, Eleonore.
Okay, hi. Thanks for bringing this up, because I think that's definitely probably the most critical aspect of cybersecurity when it comes to OT, because all of a sudden you end up with large estates that are also very diverse in terms of maturity. So let me just two things in terms of scalability. Well, maybe 3 things. The first thing is you say, yeah, you first focus on the pilot, okay? You check what good looks like, yeah? And then you scale up. This first point leads us to two angles to approach. The first one is that whatever you design and you implement on your pilot, this thing has to be scalable in 2 ways. First, it has to be scalable in terms of geographies, really the dimensions, okay? So here, I would say that you should probably choose not the most crappy sites to start with, or the most critical ones you have, etc. You need to select the sites where you have the most chances to succeed with this deployment, because again, the teams at the shop floor and at your regional scales, they need to see what good looks like, what good things, easy things look like. Okay, so usually we have customers who are really like, oh, these are the worst sites I have located, South São Paulo in Brazil. Let's go there. It's an emergency. No, because it's going to be terrible. And the experience is going to be terrible. And then all of a sudden you have your other guys in Mexico, Chile, USA. Oh my God, have you seen what they've done in Brazil? No way they come on my shop floor. So that's the first thing. When you select the site, select where you have the most chances to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, when you design that pilot project, you need to have 2 things in mind. First thing is what good looks like. The second is what good enough looks like, okay? Because then you tackle the second dimension of scalability, which is the volume you can absorb, okay? If you want to deal with the classic detection activities, etc., okay, that will be fine. But what we, for instance, the challenge we're working at the moment in our R&D department is how to detect advanced persistent threats, all the low noise, you know. And if you scale currently with our current tools, the level of automation we have that is not sufficient, you cannot scale. if tomorrow I onboard 300 factories, no matter the sophistication, it's going to be very difficult to serve a consistent high quality service across 300, 500, 600 factories. So scalability challenge really is about think what good looks like and what good enough is to absorb. Okay, when you select the sites that have the most chances to see success. So then you can expand to the crappiest ones. And third, there is really an improvement, and I say that with all the humility that I can show. What we have currently, and I see lots of solution providers around the call today, we need to improve that, guys, because it's not, again, if I use even all the technologies at Thalès that we integrate, if I have 300, 500, 600, even if I leverage the 5 security operations center we have, if I leverage the 9 countries we have where we have IT, OT, cyber experts, still it's not enough. We need to work on the automation. We need to work on the intelligence of the solutions. Mm-hmm. So to answer your questions, Dominic, really, what good looks like, what good enough looks like, where you have the best chances to succeed, and as an end user, put pressure on your suppliers so they can scale up with the technologies currently. Because the technologies are not enabling such scale as hundreds and hundreds of plants monitored 24/7 continuously with a consistent quality. It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
Okay, that makes me think we can have a concrete example of scaling up in a few minutes, but I will come back to that. I'm thinking of you, Gweltas. So on this question of scaling up, any other contribution? Roland, are you raising your hand? Yes.
Yes, I am. Let's say I just want to, really, maybe probably center the focus. At least from my side, I can comment on the cybersecurity market solutions, right? So we're here talking about a really very particular market, and of course in IoT it's even more particular. So I think our chances are greater than actually when we talk about IoT deployment, about different technology that needs to be to scale up. Why? Because cybersecurity doesn't require. It's not enough for you to be ready to scale up to sell actually your cybersecurity products and solutions, or to deploy your IT cybersecurity solutions. It's for the ecosystem to be as well ready, right? Talking about the ecosystem, meaning the infrastructure, the different stakeholders' readiness, because the value chain is like huge in IoT. Operators, suppliers, end users, platforms, and it's all about when we talk about cybersecurity as well, sensitivity of the the information, the data, and all those standards and regulations that could play a very good important role. So to answer your question, saying that are we ready to scale, at least in the European level, I think we are in the beginning of that readiness, at least from the standardization point of view, from the regulation point of view, at least for the cybersecurity solutions. I now can talk about building up a solution and relying on a standard, for example, that would be acceptable in the EU. We will wait a little bit probably to have certifications, and can address it maybe later on, to probably also get one single market in the EU, for example, allow to certify my product and sell it in all the countries and member states in the EU, which is a huge advantage. And that's probably could go wider, right? Internationally, setting up standards. So yes, I think we are much better shape now, but if you asked me this question like a couple of years ago, no, at all. I mean, I would be saying, okay, POCs are there. We were not able, at least for the cybersecurity point of view, because it was, it's still expensive to each time go and comply with different requirements, because we are moving from France to Germany to another country, which has different types of requirement that doesn't allow us to scale easily.
Let me ask you one more question, Roland. You mentioned standardization, regulation. I know you are advising the European agency, ENISA. So could you tell us, when do we have a chance to have a common frame of work in Europe regarding IIoT protection and industrial systems protection? Can we expect that when I am still alive?
Very good question. I mean, first, I can say that there are already some private initiatives that actually somehow getting to build up some recognition, some trust, at least in the IoT, regarding, for example, certifications. It's helping a little bit the market, but of course, we're still not there with regards at least to the EU recognition under the EU Cybersecurity Act, for instance, to build up what we call this IoT certification scheme. So where are we at? So you have to understand that there are not just one regulation. There could be like different regulations that would be impacting your business in the industrial, in different verticals. We talk about the RED directive. We talk about the NIS 2 coming. We talk about different vertical directive for the automotive, for example, industry, and these are indeed in different phases as of today. RED directive, for example, will impact every equipment that communicates, radio equipment that communicates, almost everything, probably not maybe some specific smart features or 5G equipment, but this is something that, for example, will today requires some manufacturers to think about, at least for the upcoming 10 months or maybe 20 months maximum, how to be ready to comply, to get the CE mark, with including requirements that actually were added to the radio cybersecurity. That's one thing. We have in the German scheme, by the way, BSI defined also an ITSIC 2.0 that requires that manufacturers would provide trustworthiness and also labeling for IoT devices. That this is something that we're gonna have a huge impact by next year, by the way, and it's really coming fast. On the European levels, the Commission has already, sent a demand or request for ENISA to build up different schemes. We are today at 3 schemes that are ongoing and actually would be coming, an implementation act that will impact more or less some of the products of IoT, but they are the common criteria scheme. You have the cloud service scheme, and you have 5G, which is started actually recently. Next was listed on the Human Rolling Work Program is IoT. And here it's a bit debate yet whether IoT will include IoT industrial or it's going to be something separate. We are still at this stage, but we somehow know that we are going through standardization to build that scheme. And I would like also to say that, there's a great effort that's happening actually in the standardization organizations that are building those standards. So we ended up, for example, with a horizontal standard that will be used for setting the requirements for every IoT device, the ETSI 30364, EN 303.645, for instance. And this is something that, if you want to get started with, this will be actually your first step to become ready and to be able probably to comply with the next certification schemes that will come for IoT that will be recognizing you.
Okay, so sounds a little more optimistic than I was. Fine. Let me turn to Gweltas again. Gweltas, I have heard that your company Wisekey is about with a partner within a partnership with a Spanish company. You're about to launch satellites.
Yes, you're right.
Small satellites, I understand, and satellites which are designed to bring connectivity to IoT in different places where you don't have usually connectivity, I guess. So what about cybersecurity concerning this new satellite business you are about to start? Can you give us some details, if possible?
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, it's true that around 80% of the Earth's surface does not have an internet connection, and there are many, let's say, verticals which would require sensors gathering data for efficiency, especially in the agriculture field, the maritime field. So we have, yes, partner with FOSSA system to launch Pico satellites. So it's a 5x5 by 10 centimeter. And the idea is clearly, as we are a cyber company, is to bring, in fact, security from the sensor to the satellite down to, let's say, the ground and an IT station, which we collect and then analyze the data. Not only on encrypting the data, but also being able to rely on authenticating and, as usual, providing the unique digital identity to the various sensors. And doing that, even though, of course, as we are talking about IoT, so limited bandwidth, we are, of course, not using cellular connectivity, but rather a LoRa type of connectivity. So that's the promise and the objective we are working on right now.
Okay, very good. So that's interesting to mention because I mean, space is also an element of strategic autonomy, obviously. And so it's always good news to hear that even, should I say, small or mid-size European company can compete also on this field. That's very interesting. Okay, maybe we could have a look at the questions that have been asked in the chat. Carla, are you giving us some light on these questions? Or Andrea, I don't know.
Yes, Dominique, I can give you some light on this question. So we have 3 questions that I would like to read to you, and I think also you can read them in the question tab on the right side of your screen. The first one is from William, who is asking about the ownership. So what do you think about the people-centric approach applied to OT security?
People-centric approach. Okay.
Applied to OT security.
Wow.
I don't know who's the best person to answer to this. You can just unmute and start.
I'm not so sure about what William means by people-centric approach. Would that refer to like local cyber champions at factory level, or does it refer more to a man-in-the-middle attack?
So maybe what we can do, is ask William to maybe precise his question once again, and then I will skip to the next question, which is beyond risk prevention solutions. Are there data backups needed in IoT OT architectures? Question from Hervé.
Regarding the backup of data, they are mandatory, simply, because you need to restart. Because if you have a breakdown into the production chain, it comes not from many parts. Either it is a network, either it is infrastructure, either it is the data. So if it is a breakdown of the infrastructure, to have a backup and redundant hardware can help to restart very quickly, even from offline, if you've been under attack. If it is regarding to the network, the backup will not be in any kind of issue. Regarding the data itself, to have the backup permits to go back to the last stable version of the data which is stored into the system to come back to an approved, secured, and relevant point of time. So yes, it is something really needed for any kind of production to have backups.
Okay.
I will. Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicolas. I will read the next question from Cyril. How about software security as a solution to bring security on devices where there is no security by design, or security like low-end IoT devices, like to help fighting reverse engineering, data extraction, or compromising man-in-the-middle attacks?
So software security to take care of IoT devices not being secured.
Well,
are there solutions?
I think Cyril's question was is targeting brownfield devices which are already on the field. I think here, if we talk about wireless devices, you fall into two categories: the devices which are capable to receive an update, and the one which cannot. And for the one which can receive an update, of course, if the update is, if you trust, let's say, the process of updating a device on the field by human intervention or by trusting some process, it's all possible to some extent, depending on the hardware, to improve, let's say, the security level of the device. I have seen that in past projects where, for instance, devices using passwords were moving to a more, let's say, elegant way of authenticating based on certificate authentication. But it's relatively, let's say, complicated matter.
Roland?
I mean, so I think probably Cyril was probably making a reference to some implementation of called them white box cryptography that allows to get a certain level of trustworthiness in the code itself without relying on any hardware capabilities such as a secure element root of trust, or things that actually would enhance the security level of protecting the sensitive keys or information that actually resides on the device. So I would say why not, and especially like for low-end IoT devices, it could be very interesting. You have to understand that in any case, whatever solution, you have to understand that there will be a balance between security and business needs, reusability, functionality. So I think software security could be a way to make such balance, but nevertheless, you have to understand that limitations do exist against some specific type of attacks that at least whatever you are doing as a vendor, you should be transparent to the different stakeholder, to the market, on the fact that those limitations as of today exist on the software side, and only hardware as of today, for example, design architecture could allow to enhance such level of security. So that could be my answer.
Thank you, Roland. And we have some more information from William. I will just read it. And in the same time, we will present to everyone a couple of questions that you might answer to us. So Carla, you can kick off the polls, but I will come back to the people-centric approach from William. So the question is the focus, if we should focus cybersecurity on people through the identification and protection of those most at-risk people, like people with power, low security awareness, etc., and employee training, since around 80% of the attacks start with an email. It's a little bit more clear.
So I will just jump in because I need to drop off in a couple of minutes. Sorry for that. I will just hijack the floor for a couple of minutes.
Go ahead.
So I think that OT cybersecurity is not an exception to IT, okay? No matter how much people claim to be aware of IT cybersecurity challenges, lots of IT cybersecurity attacks do start with an email as well. So watch out about emails. But when it comes to employee training, I think there is an awareness to be raised. Again, I'm just a bit focusing on that, but the shop floor level, the operations guys, okay, think out of the CISO CIO box. Think also about the ops guys who see cyber as a blocker and do not see it as necessarily an enabler that will basically, if you are more cyber secure, you can then implement faster your digital transformation, but also make it secure so you don't end up with a digital transformation effort and budget ruined by an attack that is going to hit your continuity, your reputation, etc. So all these efforts are going to basically be ruined by sort of malicious activity. I would like to add also a point when it comes to what William described as those most at-risk people. I think he's referring probably also to people of power, low security awareness, but also the people who are acting again at the factory level. I just want to use that example of providing them with training, show them some simulation also of attacks specifically on their plant. Okay, it's not so much effort to just do a demo in a lab to show their exact factory what could go wrong. That is something we do in our dedicated lab in the UK, and that works super well. And what William described, people with power, they love it. They love it. They love to go see that with their factory teams. And last thing from me, regarding the tension we have on the resources of IT, OT cyber expertise. The people with OT background are the ones we focus the most on to bring them up to speed on cyber and fill the huge gaps we have in our in terms of number of people we need to serve the industry, the cybersecurity for industrial sector. So employee training, etc., also can also enable a company to empower some of its own individuals, bringing them up to speed on cyber, raising their value inside the company and on the wider job market. Okay, and so we should also see that raising awareness as also opening doors for people with different backgrounds, not cybersecurity backgrounds, can break into that sector and help us, give us a hand on improving it. Because again, I think we are doing sometimes products that are in competitions or solution competition around the scope, but the cake is so huge that there will be a very nice share for everyone. So when it comes to teaming, training people, augmenting the resources we have at disposal, that's something we should focus on. So people are always the key to your cyber resiliency and post-traumatic growth, after an attack. It's all about people. So agree with you, William. So there's on that. Sorry, I need to drop off, guys.
Thank you for being here, Eleonore.
Thanks for the quality of the webinar. Great audience.
Thank you, Eleonore. We appreciate it.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. We have I think 2 more questions. One from Pierre-Emmanuel. Don't you think remote maintenance, so external access, must be banned for IoTs? Who would be the best person to talk about this?
I will take this one. Regarding unmanaged remote maintenance, surely yes, must be completely banned. But the notion of remote maintenance is also to have all the telemetry, all the data to compute, to data mine, and to give value to the service. So if it is a maintenance from the supplier itself, it should be done in a secure manner to give value, such as preventive maintenance, evolutive maintenance. All the case, we need this connection to operate and run the services. If it is a third party, it should be done in a strict and structured manner where the security commitment can be given to the end customer.
In addition to that, I can maybe say that it depends of the use case, depending of what you think about IoT. If you can bring security on the remote maintenance, I think it should be possible. But if there is no cybersecurity mechanism, yeah, should be banned. But if you can add some functionality and some mechanism that let you do the remote maintenance safely, so I think you can do it. But as I say, depending what you mean by IoT, some people say IoT for small components, some say IoT for the PLC. So depending of what you mean.
Yeah, maybe I can add up on that one. The point, if you have to think about your maintenance scenario when you think about the asset itself. So when you are with your industrial guys and you have to think about this new way of maintaining the asset, you can think about the services that are attached to it. And if it is about remote maintenance, you can design a system that opens the access for the period of time the asset must be accessed. This is let's say reducing a lot the attack surface. Another thing, which is a very simple thing, very close to the field, is giving an opportunity to do this kind of activities on equipments or piece of assets where you know you have redundancy, so that if you have an issue, you can check on the spares and try to work out on assets that are not critical first, to train yourself on these new use cases. And when it deals with preventive or let's say live connection to the asset on the long period of time, I will be much more careful. Okay, so depending on the nature of the business, depending on the nature of the maintenance, you should mobilize different level of energy to go with this kind of scenario.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, Hervé. So we have a last question from Peter, who is asking, please can you advise on which gap analysis approach to take if your company is in the beginning of implementing a cyber project? Which standards should one use?
IEC 62443. I think this is the main standard to use, or you have the American one, which is the SP 800. I think it's 0.82, something like that. But yeah, IEC 62443 is quite covering a large of topics. I don't know if you.
And as a quick win, I would add as a quick win and first approach to use the CIS 20 to have international, easy to understand assessment, and then to proceed in a second step to the specialized framework that you have given on. Okay. That's the way I'm running since years on that.
And just want to mention also the mesure détaillée, which is the detailed measure from the ANSI. Some people some years ago did quite a nice document. It's not a standard, but it's quite relevant and give you the basics and the good best practice to secure your OT environment. It's already quite old. I think it's from 2014 or 13, but the operational system don't change so much. I think it's still valuable.
That's basic IGN best practice, and this document is very useful when you start, because it goes quick, it goes fast, it's easy to read,
Yeah.
And you can bring it to OT people without to bring them in a very long cybersecurity course. Okay, and the more they get trained, the more they get aware of the situation, the more you can bring them to norms and standards that are much more heavy or much more difficult to tackle.
Okay.
And you have the sector framework. I remember in the petroleum industry, for example, you have the API 1164, which is cybersecurity for pipeline. So you have also some sector-based framework that can be used to do the assessment.
Okay.
I just want to, I think I totally agree with, with all these processes. There's one additional, which exactly gives you the answer in step-by-step way. It's called, I think the ICS is very good. The one that's for, industrial critical systems. One which is more on the international level, done by the IIC, and that's called IoT Security Maturity Model. It's also gonna give you some step-by-step way to create a gap analysis, but also relying on different standards such as 62443, for example, to be able to implement the right requirements for processes, procedures, and as well component level requirements. So that's a really good thing to also look into.
Okay. Okay. So, Andrea,
I think we've. Yeah, I don't see another question. So
it's just
I
about
think we have
time to close normally.
Yes. So I don't know if you want to say some last words, Dominique. If not, I can.
First of all, I want to thank all of our speakers. I think we had a very rich discussion this evening, and we have really touched many things. To me, it's really giving a sensation that both from the users or integrators side or from the cybersecurity supplier side, there is really a growing maturity on these questions. And I think that sounds good for the objective of the ECA, which is to help developing a strategic autonomy for Europe. Really, that's very interesting, and I want to thank you again for the richness of your contributions to all. And also, last word, we will, of course, have other occasion to meet and to discuss with other topics, probably with a different panel. I don't know if our polls, we have a poll somewhere because we have submitted different topics that could be touched during coming webinars. I'm not sure we have had much success with our poll. So
yes, we did.
So yes, what is the result?
Yes, we did. Well, for the moment, and the winning position is cloud security, followed by XDR, crypto locking attacks, and also one person interested in digital ID. So don't hesitate to cast your votes. We still have a couple of seconds left here. And also thank you for those who said that the webinar provided useful answers to your questions on industrial system cybersecurity. So yes, I think we have some good insights. And from my side, if you have any question on the European Champions Alliance or something else that we can do for you, please contact us under the email address welcome@europeanchampions.org. And yes, Dominique, I let you do the last word.
I have said what I had to say. Frankly speaking, I was impressed by the quality of the discussion. And I mean, it's not only a way to greet our speakers. Really, it's giving a sensation that we have now the maturity in Europe on this questions which are not at all easy, and that sounds good for the objectives of the ECA that we all share. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.